Chapter 5367. As an inscription master, even if she had never seen a true 7th grade inscription fluid, she could still judge the result from the general situation. At least, the inscription fluid in front of her was better than the one she had made before. It was more in line with the real situation. Seeing this scene, everyone let out a sigh of relief and revealed a joyful expression. Wang Xiangyu turned her head and looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. Miss Bailey is really a genius. I have been thinking about this problem for so long, but I couldn't think of a solution. You only heard it once and you were able to think of a solution. Your future achievements will not be low. Compared to Wang Xiangyu's attitude towards Bailey Hongzhuang before, there was no doubt that she had a trace of admiration and sincerity. Previously, after hearing the news yesterday, she was rather amazed at Bailey Hongzhuang's ability. However, after summarizing it, she knew that this was just a trick between Bailey Hongzhuang and Xiao Souo. Originally, she thought that Bailey Hongzhuang was also a proud young person. However, from the current performance it was clearly different from what she had imagined. The most important thing was that Bailey Hongzhuang was able to solve the problem that she couldn't think of. This was a huge help. Guan Jingshan smiled and nodded. Hongzhuang's talent is indeed outstanding. She has such a comprehension ability at such a young age. I also feel that her future achievements will not be simple. In fact, Bailey Hongzhuang's current achievements were already very impressive. At this age, whether it was the inscription pattern technique, medical skills, or alchemy, she was so outstanding. If it was someone else, as long as they could reach this level at this age, they would be called a genius, not to mention Bailey Hongzhuang, who had all three. When Guan Qian heard that this problem was actually solved by Bailey Hongzhuang, he was also shocked. This was a 7th grade inscription. Bailey Hongzhuang was only a 6th grade inscription master. She was actually able to deal with a 7th grade inscription. This ability was simply too shocking. Master Wang, in fact, I just thought it through and blurted it out. It can only be considered as a mistake. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. Of course, she wouldn't say that she already knew how to draw the 7th level vibration pattern, so she knew where the problem was as soon as she heard it. Otherwise, the two masters would definitely use her for research. After all, a young man from the lower dimensions was actually aware of such a long-lost inscription, and that was truly too shocking. After successfully creating the inscription fluid, Wang Xiangyu began to try to draw it. Creating the inscription liquid was an extremely important step, but whether or not it could be drawn successfully depended on one's own ability. Even if she had been studying the inscription pattern for a long time, she still couldn't guarantee that she could draw it successfully. As expected, the first inscription failed. Seeing this, Wang Xiangyu's expression was very calm, as if everything was within her expectations. Then, she began to draw the second one. At the same time, Guan Jingshan also began to try to draw the inscription pattern. The two of them got busy together. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two maintained their previous posture as they watched the two of them draw the inscription pattern. The method of drawing the 7th level vibration pattern has been lost for many years. A few days ago, they obtained the method from a relic. If they want to draw it successfully, I'm afraid it will take a lot of effort. Lu Yuhai looked at the two of them, who were concentrating, and quietly said. Chapter 5368. Of course, no one had ever succeeded in drawing this inscription pattern before, so it would take a lot of time when trying to draw it. It couldn't be completed in a short time. Even she, who had been learning from the seniors in the Chaos Ring for a long time, had to go through many failures before finally succeeding. The higher the level of the inscription pattern, the more complicated the pattern was. There were many overlapping inscriptions, like a maze, and one had to find the line to draw. At the same time, there couldn't be any mistakes during the drawing. As long as there was a pause or something else, it would lead to the failure of the inscription pattern. In fact, the situation was just as the two of them expected. They had drawn several inscriptions in a row, but all of them ended in failure. Guan Jingshan sighed faintly. Even if the inscription liquid was successfully made, it would still take some time for them to completely draw the 7th grade oscillation pattern. Thinking of Lu Yuhai and Bailey Hong Zhuang who were still waiting, he stopped the movement of his hands. As for the 7th grade oscillation pattern, it wouldn't be too late to draw it later. It wasn't good to let them wait like this. It's unlikely to draw the 7th grade oscillation pattern today. Let's go out and have some tea first, Guan Jingshan said with a smile. Lu Yuhai smiled. With your ability, it's only a matter of time before you succeed. I hope so, Guan Jingshan sighed, but his vicissitude and kind face was full of confidence. When Guan Jingshan stopped, Wang Xiangyu failed once again. This time, she didn't continue to try, but walked out and sat down. You're not going to continue drawing? Seeing Wang Xiangyu's action, Guan Jingshan was a little surprised. In this aspect, Wang Xiangyu had always been like a demon, and it was impossible for her to stop at this time. Therefore, at this moment, he only felt that the sun rose from the west. No, Wang Xiangyu waved her hand, it's okay to draw it later, but it can't be late to recruit talents. As she spoke, Wang Xiangyu's eyes fell on Bailey Hongzhuang's body, with a strong interest and appreciation, but also a trace of determination. Feeling Wang Xiangyu's naked gaze, Bailey Hongzhuang only felt a burst of uneasiness. As Wang Xiangyu's voice fell, Guan Jingshan immediately understood what she meant. At this time, Lu Yuhai took the lead and said, "It seems that Master Wang is preparing to snatch people in front of me." Wang Xiangyu was slightly taken aback. What do you mean? When did Bailey Hongzhuang have anything to do with you? Hongzhuang is a deacon of our alchemist guild. You're also an alchemist. Wang Xiangyu was surprised. She really didn't know much about this. Previously, she had only heard about Bailey Hongzhuang from people talking about what had happened yesterday. She did not know much about the rest. Yes, Bailey Hongzhuang replied. However, Wang Xiangyu didn't mind in the slightest and said, "That's fine as well. The Alchemist Association is the Alchemist Association, and we're the Inscription Masters Association. There's no difference between the two. Since Hongzhuang is a deacon of your Alchemist Association, then I won't say anything else. How about letting her become a deacon of our Inscription Association?" Chapter 5369. If she could become a deacon of the guild, there would undoubtedly be a lot of convenience. Although she had entered the Immortal Cloud's secret realm directly after becoming a deacon of the Alchemist Guild, she did not have much time to go to the Alchemist Guild after returning. But long ago, she had already known the convenience of becoming a deacon of the Alchemist Guild. At least it would be more convenient in terms of purchasing medicinal herbs and so on. If she wanted to purchase a better alchemy furnace, she only needed to spend her own point. Not only that, if someone needed the same kind of medicinal herb as her, the deacon would have priority to get it. Although this didn't seem to play a big role, once a rare medicinal herb was needed, this convenience would also be reflected. Although she didn't know the situation of the Inscription Association, she could roughly guess that it shouldn't be too different. However, she was now a deacon of the Alchemist Guild, so this point still depended on Lu Yuhai's attitude. Lu Yuhai looked at Wang Xiangyu, who didn't restrain herself in front of him, and couldn't help but chuckle. "I knew your character was still like this. Since you know, then you shouldn't stop me." Wang Xiangyu's face was full of smiles. Obviously, she already had a card up her sleeve. She would never give up such a talent. Moreover, she and Lu Yuhai had known each other for a long time, so she believed that he still had some faith. "Then I have to be able to stop you first." Lu Yuhai laughed involuntarily and turned to look at Bailey Hongzhuang. "Becoming a deacon of the Inscription Association will also be of great help to you. If there is no problem, then agree." For a talent like Bailey Hongzhuang, he undoubtedly appreciated it very much. Bailey Hongzhuang could help Wang Xiangyu solve such a problem by just casually mentioning it before. Even if Wang Xiangyu didn't recruit her to the Inscription Association today, she would eventually think of other ways to recruit her. In this case, he might as well do her a favor at little cost. Of course, he also appreciated Bailey Hongzhuang and hoped that Bailey Hongzhuang would have a better development. As Lu Yuhai's voice fell, Wang Xiangyu and the others' gazes fell on Bailey Hongzhuang. Hongzhuang, after you become a deacon of our Inscription Association, you will have a certain amount of power. You will be able to participate in many matters of the Inscription Association, and you will also be able to carry out punishment. Of course, the most important thing is that you can get a lot of materials at the lowest price, and there will be a certain amount of points issued every month. You can use the points to exchange for the materials or inscriptions you need. Guan Jingshan looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a smile. In fact, he had already thought of recruiting her. However, before they could talk about this issue, Wang Xiangyu had already arrived. However, the final result was still the same. Listening to this treatment, Bailey Hongzhuang also understood. Sure enough, the treatment of the deacons of the major guilds was about the same. An additional identity meant an additional layer of protection. She didn't know when she would need it in the future, so she didn't mind. Then I thank the two masters. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang nod in agreement, Guan Jingshan and Wang Xiangyu's faces revealed a smile. Such a talent would sooner or later emerge. Now that she was recruited by their Piercing Wind City's Inscription Association, it would be their glory in the future. Chapter 5370. Soon, the Inscription Association announced that Bailey Hongzhuang had become a deacon. In the blink of an eye, the news spread like wildfire and quickly spread throughout the entire Piercing Wind City. Bailey Hongzhuang is really amazing. I remember that she had already become a deacon of the Alchemist Association, and now she has another identity. In the future, if anyone wants to touch her, they will have to think twice. With her ability, it is expected that she would become a deacon. Such a young 6th grade inscription master, her future achievements will definitely be extraordinary. Furthermore, her identity is not low. If Xiao Sou did not have the identity of the Holy Maiden, she would not be comparable to Bailey Hongzhuang. At that time, everyone felt that the D family's choice was too strange. Now it seems that their choice was not bad. Now, no one would say that the D family's choice to give up Xiao Sou was stupid. It was just that everyone had their own preferences. You said that everyone is saying that there are very few people in the younger generation who can stand shoulder to shoulder with Bailey Hongzhuang? When Xiao Sou heard the maid's words, her pretty face was filled with displeasure and jealousy. Usually, these words were used to describe her, but now they were used on Bailey Hongzhuang. It was simply hateful. Looking at Xiao Sou's ferocious expression, the maid nodded her head. She was afraid that her actions would provoke Xiao Sou's anger. Deacon status? Xiao Sou snorted. The Inscription Association really thinks highly of her. She is only a 6th grade inscription master. What qualifications does she have to become a deacon? When Jun Lingxuan walked into the room, he saw Xiao Sou's furious look. He waved his hand to signal the maid to leave and said, "So, this time Bailey Hongzhuang has been in the limelight in the assessment. The Inscription Association's actions are actually within our expectations. You don't have to take it to heart." I really hate Bailey Hongzhuang. Ever since she appeared, everything has been going wrong for me. Xiao Sou's face was filled with resentment. Ever since she had awakened the light attribute, no one had dared to treat her like this. Of course, there were many outstanding women, but as soon as she appeared, the light of others would be instantly overshadowed by her. Until the appearance of Bailey Hongzhuang, a woman whom she had never taken seriously, was now shocking everyone again and again. This was what she couldn't accept the most. Next year will be the day you become the saintess of the light. All the bad things will stop for today. After tomorrow, no one will be able to take away your glory. Jun Lingxuan had a charming smile on his face. He was confident that as long as Xiao Sou became the Saint of Light, all other problems would be solved. The Saintess of the Light was the symbol of the Light Sacred Assembly. A mere deacon couldn't be compared with the Saintess of the Light. Hearing this, Xiao Sou's complexion became better. She smiled and said, "That's right, tomorrow I will finally become the Saintess of the Light. At that time, the people of the D family will come." Jun Lingxuan raised his eyebrows. The ridicule and complacency in his handsome eyes had already revealed everything he was thinking. Then today I will let Bailey Hongzhuang be complacent. In any case, she will soon lose interest in these things. Chapter 53-71. The next day, the sun shone brightly and the sky was clear and beautiful. Today's weather is so good. It seems that even the heavens know that today is the day that our soul will succeed the position of the Saint of Light. Madame Zhao's face was filled with joy as she looked at the beautiful Xiao Sou in front of her. She was so satisfied that the corners of her mouth almost reached the back of her ears. Ever since she found out that Xiao Sou had an unparalleled talent in the light attribute, she had been looking forward to this day. After waiting for so many years, it was finally here. It was hard to describe how wonderful this feeling was. The entire Xiao family was filled with jubilation at this moment. Xiao Sou had become the Saint of Light, and this was the Xiao family's greatest glory. The crowd of cultivators were looking forward to the succession ceremony that would be held in the Piercing Wind City later on. They had been looking forward to that scene for a long time. When the time comes, they would receive the envious gazes of cultivators from various large forces. Even if they were not the ones who would become the Saint of Light, they would still share the glory. That's natural. We Sou have always received preferential treatment from the heavens. Xiao Yanlong looked at Xiao Sou with satisfaction. He had always been very satisfied with this daughter of his. She was his pride. Tong Yunshu had also rushed over early in the morning. After waiting for so long, Xiao Sou had finally become the Saint of Light. Seeing Tong Yunshu's appearance, Xiao Sou's fair face immediately lit up with a joyful and affectionate smile. She stood up and walked over to greet her. "Master, you're here. So, you're just too beautiful today," Tong Yunshu praised from the bottom of her heart. Xiao Sou smiled with a hint of bashfulness and shyness. "From today onwards, you're the Saint of Light. From now on, you have to pay attention to your identity no matter where you go. You can't cause any trouble." Hearing this, Xiao Sou felt guilty. "Master, I've implicated you in the previous incident." "Silly girl, there's no need to talk about implicating between us." Tong Yunshu's smile remained. "Don't take the previous incident to heart. You were only reprimanded by the president. It's no big deal." "Master, I won't let you suffer any grievances in the future." Xiao Sou looked at Tong Yunshu seriously, her clear and bright eyes filled with determination. It was all thanks to her master's help that she was able to get to where she was today. Otherwise, she would not have become the Saint of Light. "It's good that you have this kind of heart, but what Master wants most is to see you happy." "Of course I am." "Mrs. Xiao, you help Sei Wu prepare first. I'll go outside and see if there's anything I need." Tong Yunshu had known the Xiao clan for many years, and she was also Xiao Sou's master. Both sides were already very familiar with each other, so she was extremely casual. "All right." After Tong Yunshu noticed that everything was ready, she sat down on the stone bench and looked at the festive scene of the Xiao clan. It was even livelier than a festival. Logically speaking, she should be very happy at such a moment. After all, they had been waiting for this day for too long. However, for some reason, she had a bad premonition in her heart, as if something was going to happen. However, no matter how she thought about it, she couldn't think of anything that could happen today. Chapter 53-72. "Master, what are you thinking about? Why do you look so unhappy?" Xiao Sou frowned. Could it be that the previous matter was not so simple? Did President punish you? As far as Xiao Sou was concerned, Tong Yunshu was her closest kin. Ever since her light attribute talent was discovered, She had been cultivating with Tong Yunshu, and it could be said that the time she spent with Tong Yunshu was much longer than her parents, so their relationship was naturally very deep. Seeing Xiao so nervous that she could not wait to find President Liu to reason with him, Tong Yunshu hurriedly waved her hand. So, things are not what you think. Then what is it? Xiao So patiently asked. Master, could it be that there are still misgivings between you and me? If that is really the case, then it really hurts me. Seeing this, Tong Yunshu looked deeply at Xiao Sou and her heart instantly softened. So, it is not that Master is not willing to tell you, but I do not want to affect your mood. Tong Yunshu was actually very helpless, as she did not know why she would have such a premonition on such a joyous day. Master, just say it. Tong Yunshu hesitated for a moment but still said, I do not know why, but I feel that something might happen today. Hearing this, Xiao Sou's expression slightly paused before she suddenly smiled. Master, so this is what you are talking about. Don't worry, what could happen on such a day? The Piercing Wind City is the headquarters of the Holy Light Assembly, and if someone dares to cause trouble at this time, wouldn't that be seeking their own death? Xiao Sou's expression was calm. If it was before, she was indeed worried that Bailey Hongzhuang would snatch her position. But now, she was not worried at all. She was the one who had truly lit up the Holy Maiden Crystal. From the moment the Saintess Crystal was lit up, she could no longer feel any threat. Aren't you worried that Bailey Hongzhuang would do something? Looking at Xiao Sou's solemn expression, Tong Yunshu's mood relaxed a little. In fact, she also felt that her worries were completely unreasonable. At a time like this, what else can she do? Xiao Sou raised her eyebrows. She has been in the limelight for the past few days, and from today onwards, she will not be able to continue to be arrogant in front of me. Once she became the Holy Maiden of Light, even if she was still young, her position would be extraordinary. If Bailey Hongzhuang dared to treat her with the Holy Light Assembly's guards to teach Bailey Hongzhuang a lesson, even if it was Di Beichen, he would not be able to protect her. Master! 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 On this day, Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest had also woken up early. Today is the day that Xiao Sou will succeed the position of the Holy Maiden of Light. 2 days ago, the people of the Holy Light Assembly were already busy. This time, the battle array is unprecedentedly huge. Di Xiaofeng's lips curled into a cold smile. If it was someone else who succeeded the position of the Holy Maiden of Light, perhaps he would sincerely congratulate them. However, it was Xiao Sou, and he hated that he could not meet with any problems halfway. Chapter 53-73. Just thinking about it shows how proud Xiao Sou is right now. Shangguan Yingying pursed her lips. She really didn't like Xiao Sou. How could someone like her have the right to become the Saint of Light? How unreasonable! However, her gaze subconsciously fell upon Bailey Hongzhuang. She knew that Hongzhuang was going to make her move today. This was going to be an exciting show. As long as Hongzhuang was able to snatch the position of the Saint of Light, she felt that the scene would be very interesting. Bitches will be punished by the heavens. Don't worry about it. When Xiren smiled faintly. Not everyone in the Di family knew about this. Apart from them, only Di Yujue and Di Xiaofeng knew about it. The reason for this was naturally to prevent spies from leaking the secret. If Xiao Sou and the others were prepared, then today's matter would not be so easy to proceed. Hence, even now they were still pretending that they didn't know anything. The cultivators from the Di family were also unwilling to accept this. In the past, they had been looking forward to Xiao Sou becoming the Saint of Light. However, ever since the two parties had broken off their relationship, they couldn't wait for this identity to disappear. After all, once the Xiao family's status rose, it wouldn't be good news for them. Di Yujue looked at the disciples who were discussing animatedly. His handsome face was filled with seriousness as he spoke in a steady voice. Everyone, restrain yourselves. We're leaving now. As soon as he spoke, the chattering crowd immediately shut their mouths and followed closely behind Di Yujue. Today, almost everyone had gathered in one place, which was near the plaza where the successor ceremony of the Holy Light Assembly would be held. Many great forces had come to this grand occasion. Naturally, no one wanted to miss it. As Bailey Hongzhuang arrived, her clear eyes were filled with astonishment when she saw the monstrous array in front of her. The open-air plaza where the assessment had been held a few days ago was already very large. However, the plaza in front of her was almost 10 times larger than the open-air plaza. The guards of the Holy Light Assembly were scattered all around the square, responsible for maintaining order. Young and beautiful attendants politely led the teams of the various forces to their exclusive seat. Only in this way could he ensure that everything would proceed smoothly and in an orderly manner. The giant stage in the center was made of white jade, and it emitted a lustrous luster. The seats around it were also arranged in an extremely intimate manner. If this wasn't a solemn and serious occasion, all kinds of fruits and drinks would have been served. I've long expected this to be an amazing battle, but now that I look at it, it's even more spectacular than I imagined. Ao Lingxiao couldn't help but sigh. Just from this place alone, he could tell how spectacular the succession ceremony would be. Mo Yunjue sized up everything in front of him. His deep gaze quietly fell on Bailey Hongzhuang. Fortunately, all of this was prepared for Hongzhuang. Actually, this square is already very spectacular. The Holy Light Assembly's decennial chanting ceremony is held here. Every time the chanting ceremony was held, a large number of cultivators would rush over. This was because every cultivator would be able to obtain great benefits from the chanting. Chapter 53-74. Di Xiaofeng saw that Di Beichen and the others might not understand, so he started to explain. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others nodded. Now it was easy to understand. They had just arrived, but the waitress immediately came up to welcome them and led them to the Di family's exclusive seat. As Bailey Hongzhuang and the others sat down, they understood that the seating arrangement was very particular. It was based on the size of the power. Coincidentally, the Jun family was sitting on the other side of them. The disciples from both sides looked at each other, and naturally, they hated each other. Diyu Jue, I didn't expect such a coincidence. Jun Hongcheng looked at Diyu Jue with a smile. Today was the day his future daughter-in-law would become the Holy Maiden of the Light. Coincidentally, Diyu Jue was sitting beside him. Fate was really strange. I don't think this is a coincidence, said Diyu Jue indifferently. His jade-like face carried indifference and arrogance. Jun Hongcheng looked at Diyu Jue and felt that this guy's ability to choke people was getting stronger and stronger. He was just casually saying something, and he was choked to the point that he couldn't say anything. However, when he noticed the worry faintly revealed between Diyu Jue's brows, his mood improved again. At this moment, Diyu Jue was just putting on a strong front, not wanting to lose face. However, he was definitely very vexed in his heart. He was worried that after the Shao clan became stronger, their position would be in danger. Thinking about this, Jun Hongqing didn't care about being choked just now. After all, they were the ones who benefited from this matter. There was no need to ridicule him. Diyu Jue was already ugly enough. Diyu Jue didn't know that Jun Hongqing was thinking about so many things in such a short time. He was actually worried about whether it would be difficult for his daughter-in-law to become the Holy Maiden of the Light. Just by looking at the scale, one could tell how many forces had come here today. If it were an ordinary young man, he would feel extremely nervous standing on this high platform, let alone interrupting the succession ceremony. Even though Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen had already shown extraordinary courage, the current situation was obviously different from before. The pressure was far greater than before. Xiaofeng, I've finally met you. A surprised voice rose in the air. Immediately after, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others noticed a group coming from the other side. It was the Murong clan. They hadn't seen Murong Jing for a while since they parted ways in the Water Pool City. The reunion of old friends was naturally a joyous occasion. Murong Jing, what took you so long? Di Xiaofeng stood up with a face full of smiles. I haven't seen your clan's troops in the Piercing Wind City these few days. I'm late. I'm really late. Murong Jing replied with a smile. Our clan was delayed by some matters and we only arrived at the Piercing Wind City yesterday. Fortunately, we did not miss today's ceremony. It's not a big deal if you miss it. Haha, that's true. Murong Jing naturally understood that the Di family probably didn't want to participate in this succession ceremony. It would be inappropriate if they didn't come because of the Holy Light Assembly. Therefore, they could only reluctantly come. At this time, the more glorious Xiao Shou was, the worse the Di family's reputation would be. Regarding this, he felt very helpless. What a pity. Actually, I think Hong Zhuang is more suitable to be the Holy Maiden of the Light. Chapter 5375. Lower your voice. Do you want to be targeted by others at this time? Di Xiaofeng lowered his voice. It was not a big deal for them to talk about such things normally. However, at this time, if they were heard by someone with ulterior motives, it would inevitably cause some trouble. He naturally did not care about such things. However, he did not wish for his friends to be implicated because of him. Looking at Di Xiaofeng's worried expression, Murong Jing smiled calmly. Don't worry. I'm not the only one with this idea. Moreover, even if Xiao Shou is already the Holy Maiden of Light, it's impossible for her to completely stop everyone from talking. Long before he said those words, he had already considered all of this. He believed that the cultivators who participated in the Immortal Cloud secret realm last time would have the same idea. It was just a matter of whether they said it or not. Moreover, his relationship with Di Xiaofeng was so good that Xiao Shou had long been concerned about him. It would be useless for him to distance himself from them. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others smiled faintly. Sure enough, after knowing each other for so long, Murong Jing had always been so calm. Jun Lingxuan looked at Di Xiaofeng and the others who were chatting happily. A trace of coldness flashed through his eyes. These guys were still so annoying. Young Master Di, we meet again. Hearing the familiar voice, Di Baichen turned his head and saw Chen Feng walking over. The Great Devil Sex team was not small. However, Chen Feng had always been the leader of the team. Listening to your voice, you seem to have missed me? Di Baichen teased. Hearing this, Chen Feng chuckled. Indeed. Compared to Bailey Hongzhuang and the others who already knew about the relationship between Di Baichen and Chen Feng, many of the new faces of the Great Devil Sect revealed expressions of disbelief. Their eldest senior brother was usually a person who did not smile. They did not expect him to be so happy talking with someone today. Soon, the disciples in the team who understood the situation started to explain that these two had a life-and-death relationship. The Jiang clan's team walked over as well. Jiang Wenyan welcomed them with a face full of smiles. The head of the Jiang family was a little confused as to why Jiang Wenyan would choose to rope in the Di family at such a time. However, he didn't think that there was anything wrong with it. Xiao Shou had become the Saint of Light, and her status had changed greatly. However, the Di family was not weak either. It could only be said that Jiang Wenyan favored them more. He was very confident in his son's foresight. Over the past few years, Jiang Wenyan's performance had never disappointed him, so he let Jiang Wenyan be. At this moment, many forces had gathered in the square. When the crowd saw how lively the Di family was, they were all shocked. I thought that since the Xiao family was in the limelight today, many forces would keep their distance from the Di family. I didn't expect the situation to be the opposite of what I expected. Actually, I think that the Di family isn't weak either. Moreover, they have alchemists, doctors, and inscriptionists. This development will be very impressive. This is going to be really lively. Naturally, the Lin family's team was not far away. It was just that they had arrived slightly later than them, so there were two more teams between them. Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze fell on the back. The stronger the force, the more seats they would have. The Bailey family was only a small family. Naturally, their status could not be compared to the big families. Therefore, she was also curious as to where her seat would be. Chapter 5376. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang was also surprised. Logically speaking, the Bailey family and the Ao family should be on the same scale. Even though they were only one row ahead of the rest, it was enough to show that they were ahead of the rest by quite a bit. However, after thinking about it for a while, she came to an understanding. Thinking about it, this was probably an arrangement made after seeing her relationship with the D family. The Ao family was dependent on the Jun family, while the Bailey family and the D family were connected by marriage. Naturally, the two families were completely different. After Bai Li Fan sat in the seat that was arranged, he was also very surprised. This was because some of the families that were more influential than them were actually ranked at the back. Originally, he was worried that his family's position was wrong, but after confirming it again and again, he was sure that everything was correct and there was no problem. At such a lively time, the Nangong family naturally arrived. As soon as the news of Xiao Sou and Jun Lingxuan's engagement spread, Nangong Yuqing had completely given up on this idea. In fact, he already knew that his chances were not high. Moreover, his father no longer supported him, so all his efforts over the years were in vain. Seeing the people from the Nangong family arrive, Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at them and found that Nangong Xiaolong was not in the group. Hongzhuang, Nangong Xiaolong actually did not appear at such a lively occasion. How surprising! Bailey Yunyan's eyes were filled with surprise. She originally thought that she would definitely see him today. Presumably, he also knows how shameful his current appearance is, so he didn't come. Bailey Hongzhuang said faintly. For such a shameless guy, she really felt disgusted. If Bailey she had not been soft-hearted in the end, it would have been a good thing for such a person to fall early. However, after this incident, Nangong Xiaolong's status in the Nangong family would be greatly reduced. This was not bad. In fact, everything was as Bailey Hongzhuang had expected. Nangong Xiaolong had been crippled by many forces. If he were to appear today, it would definitely remind everyone of the previous incident. Once they started talking about it, it would be extremely detrimental to their family's image. After much consideration, he finally made this decision. Of course, Nangong Xiaolong was extremely indignant about this. "Father, I'm going to the Bailey family's team." Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Diyu Jue and said. She was now the head of the Bailey family. Although she was also the young mistress of the D family, she still had to make a trip there. Hearing this, Diyu Jue naturally knew about this situation. He immediately nodded and said, "Go." In the next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang slowly walked towards the Bailey family. By now, most of the teams had already taken their seat. The square was very large, but there were even more people here. In a short period of time, all the seats were filled. Therefore, when Bailey Hongzhuang stood up, she attracted a lot of attention. A beauty was already very eye-catching, let alone the young mistress of the D family who was extremely eye-catching today. When the crowd saw the direction that Bailey Hongzhuang was walking in, they immediately understood. However, many people were still shocked. Chapter 5377. The Bailey family is really going all out. For the sake of development, they're even willing to give away their family. How amazing! Some of the families who didn't understand why the Bailey family's position was higher than theirs immediately understood. It turned out that this was the most important reason. For a moment, everyone was somewhat jealous. As a small family, it was really difficult for them to improve. Now that the Bailey family suddenly had a meteoric rise, their feelings were naturally extremely complicated. Although the D family, Xiao family, and Jun family's conflicts were constantly intensifying, an aristocratic family was still an aristocratic family. As long as they were willing to support a small family, the small family's strength could quickly improve. If it was someone else, there was no guarantee that they would have such ability. However, Bailey Hongzhuang was the D family's young madam. The D family even gave up Xiao So for her. It was obvious how much importance they attached to her. Bai Li Fan frowned slightly as he listened to the discussions around him. However, after seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's carefree and calm smile, he calmed down. After all, the family head was also being criticized by everyone. However, why was the family head so calm? These guys would find out the truth sooner or later. When that time came, they would be envious of the family head for having such a talent. Who told them not to have such good fortune? The D family's members looked at Bailey Hongzhuang's peerless figure with anticipation and admiration in their eyes. They had already heard about the family head's performance a few days ago. She was simply a role model for them to worship. Although the D family had doctors and alchemists, their ranks were completely inferior to the family head. As for inscriptionists, the D family didn't have any. This was because inscriptionists required enough comprehension and were even rarer than alchemists. However, their family head was actually a 6th-level inscriptionist. They really felt that it was a pity that they missed the family head's opportunity to be in the limelight a few days ago. Fortunately, they could guess how shocking the situation was just by listening to everyone's discussions. Even if they didn't see it with their own eyes, it was still very satisfying. Family head. As Bailey Hongzhuang arrived, everyone in the Bailey family greeted her respectfully. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. Wherever her gaze landed, the great elder quickly gave up a seat. Bailey Hongzhuang took the opportunity to sit down. Hearing this unanimous greeting her, no one doubted that this was fake news. Bailey Hongzhuang is really capable. She was born in the lower world, but in the blink of an eye she became the head of an upper world family. Status. Isn't that so? Was. Family head, these people are just talkative. You don't have to take it to heart. The surrounding discussions made Bai Li Fan feel a little awkward. He didn't want such untruthful remarks to affect the family head's mood. Bailey Hongzhuang waved her hand when she heard this. These kinds of remarks will disappear very soon. Furthermore, can't you hear that you're more jealous? Bai Li Fan was slightly stunned. After thinking carefully, a smile appeared on his face. That's indeed the case. Chapter 5378. As Bailey Hongzhuang's voice fell, Bailey Fan suddenly froze. He did not understand the meaning of the Bailey family's words. Today was the day when the family's reputation would spread? After thinking carefully for a moment, Bai Li Fan felt that Bailey Hongzhuang was probably talking about today. From today onwards, everyone would know that she was the family head of the Bailey family. Furthermore, the Bailey family and the D family had an inseparable relationship. He had already sensed this earlier. Ever since everyone knew about the relationship between their family and the D family, the way they looked at them had changed. Although there were many criticisms, at least they had received a lot of attention. Just as everyone was talking, the Light Sacred Assembly's president, Lu Hongwei, appeared on the stage in the middle. Following his appearance, the originally bustling square suddenly quieted down a little. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to come here. I would like to express my gratitude to everyone. Lu Hongwei bowed. His genial face was filled with a joyful smile. As everyone knows, the Light Sacred Assembly has not had a holy maiden for many years. From the day I became the president of the Light Sacred Assembly, this responsibility has fallen on my shoulders. All these years, I have been trying to find a young person who could become the holy maiden. Fortunately, I have not let you down. I have finally found her. Lu Hongwei looked at the cultivators around him. His face was filled with pride. This could be considered as fulfilling the old president's last wish. Even if his soul were to return to the 9 heavens in the future, he would still have the face to meet the old president. Now, let us welcome the holy maiden. As soon as he said this, the entire square was filled with thunderous applause. Immediately after, Xiao Se Wu, like a moon surrounded by stars, slowly appeared in front of everyone with elegant steps. Today, Xiao Se Wu was wearing a white gauze dress with fluttering feathers woven with silver thread. The aqua blue pattern embellished the dress, which reflected the dazzling light of the stars under the sunlight. The clothes were specially tailored to accentuate her figure perfectly, revealing her exquisite curves. On her head, there was a crystal crown that symbolized supreme glory and nobility. Her appearance had always been outstanding, and her exquisite makeup made her look even more elegant and otherworldly. The moment she appeared, she gave people a feeling of holiness, elegance, and inviolability. Seeing Xiao So like this, everyone below the stage was shocked. Then, a burst of exclamations and sighs broke out. Heavens, I didn't expect Xiao So to be so beautiful. After becoming the saintess of the light, even her temperament has become different. Yes, she is so elegant, calm, and noble. This is the saint of light. If it was said that there were many people who were disdainful of Xiao Se Wu's strength and character before, then after seeing such a Xiao Se Wu at this moment, their previous thoughts quietly turned into nothingness. Jun Lingxuan looked at Xiao So, who was the center of attention, and was momentarily dazed. So Xiao So was also so beautiful. A sense of pride arose spontaneously. This was his, Jun Lingxuan's, fiancée. For a moment, many people's gazes also fell on Jun Lingxuan and Di Beichen. Looking at Jun Lingxuan, they were naturally filled with envy. To be able to become a couple with such a saintess of the light was something to be envied. As for looking at Di Beichen, everyone wanted to know if Di Beichen would regret it. Chapter 5379. Xiao So could feel the envious and yearning gazes of the crowd as she stood on the high platform. She could not help but raise the corners of her lips. That was right. This was everything that belonged to her. She was born to be the center of attention. Xiao Yanlong, Tong Yunshu, and the others stared at Xiao So, who was enjoying her limitless glory and could not hide their feelings of comfort and excitement. After waiting for so many years, this day has finally come. Xiao So turned her gaze and quietly looked at the Di family's group. However, she was shocked when she did not see Bailey Hongzhuang. Could it be that Bailey Hongzhuang was afraid of seeing my success, so she had purposely found an excuse to not come today? Xiao So found it funny at the thought of this. Bailey Hongzhuang has always put on a tough front, but now, she finally knows how big of a gap there is between them. However, even if Bailey Hongzhuang had not come today, it would have been useless. This matter would have spread throughout the upper realm and everyone would know about it. The next moment, Xiao Se Wu's gaze shifted to Di Beichen. For this man who once made her fall in love with him at first sight, she was also unwilling, and now she was even more resentful. Everyone knew that she had been rejected, and this had undoubtedly caused her to lose face. She also wanted to see Di Beichen's face filled with regret. However, she did not see it because Di Beichen had been watching everything calmly from the very beginning. He did not even show the most basic expression of amazement or stupefaction. A sense of resentment rose in her heart for no reason. She did not know whether Di Beichen was faking it or not. How could he not feel any ripples in his heart at a time like this? When she noticed Jun Lingxuan's expression, Xiao So's face bloomed into a smile once again. Master, look at how pleased Xiao So is. Tsk. Xiao He pursed her lips. She had never concealed her disgust towards people. Right now, she's at the peak of her life. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into an enchanting smile, but her eyes were sharp. She had no intention of destroying the interests of others, but when others threatened her, she would not be polite either. She could only blame Xiao So for wanting to take everything away from her, so the two of them were destined to compete. I'm really looking forward to Xiao So's expression. Xiao He rubbed its hands. Its bright and clear eyes were filled with anticipation. It believed that its master would definitely succeed. When Lu Hongwei saw Xiao So shining like a star, the smile on his face widened, revealing joy and pride. She is Xiao Sou. Thunderous applause sounded again. The group of young cultivators was extremely envious of Xiao Sou. Who could stand shoulder to shoulder with such glory? There were many outstanding cultivators, but there was only one holy maiden. Her position was not something that could be shaken by others, not even by the entire aristocratic family. Xiao Sou enjoyed the applause very much. She walked gracefully to Lu Hongwei's side and stood still, looking at the densely packed crowd in front of her. All these years, Xiao Sou has been working very hard to get to where she is today. The Holy Light Assembly is also very glad that we've finally found the Holy Maiden. Shortly after, Vice President Tong Yunshu's figure appeared before everyone's eyes. I'm sure everyone is very curious about the conditions to become the Holy Maiden. Now that we've found the Holy Maiden, we'll also announce the conditions to everyone. Chapter 5380. In fact, many people were filled with curiosity about this. Even if they were not of the light attribute, they also wanted to know how Xiao Sou managed to achieve a condition that others could not. There are two conditions to become the Saint of the Light. First, the light attribute talent must be at the maximum level without any other impurities. Second, the Saint's crystal must be lit. When these words came out, everyone could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. They did not know what the Saint's crystal was, but the fact that the light attribute was at the maximum level was enough to make them flinch. Those who had awakened their talents to the 7th level were already considered geniuses. Those who had awakened their talents to the 8th or even 9th level were the top geniuses of the major forces. As for the maximum level, it was almost unheard of. However, the condition to become the Saint of the Light required one to have a maximum level of talent. At this moment, everyone finally understood why the Holy Light Assembly had been searching for the Saint of the Light for so many years without success. It turned out that it was so difficult. Did I hear wrongly? Doesn't this mean that Xiao Sou's talent attribute has reached the maximum level? That's too terrifying. Previously, I only knew that Xiao Sou had an extraordinary background. Now I know that Xiao Sou is so powerful. She's a genius among geniuses with such talent. With such talent, her cultivation speed is not something that ordinary people can compare to. Previously, I thought that Bailey Hongzhuang was not weak compared to her. Now it seems that the gap between them is not ordinary. These words resonated with the crowd. Even if Bailey Hongzhuang was an expert in many professions, the upper realm was still a world that revered martial arts. Without enough power, everything was meaningless. Even other professions were born to support one's power. With a maximum level of talent and the position of the Saint of the Light, Xiao Sou's future would be infinitely brilliant. For a moment, everyone looked at the D family with a hint of sympathy. They had made the wrong choice after all. If they knew about Xiao Sou's talent, they would not have made such a decision. That's not right. The D family and the Xiao family are so close. They should know about Xiao Sou's situation very well. Everyone looked at each other. Due to the rise in Xiao Sou's status, the few major forces that were related to her had been contacted by everyone. At this moment, Lu Hongwei's voice sounded again. Of course, as long as one can ignite the Saintess crystal, it doesn't matter if one's talent has not reached the maximum level. However, according to our research, even if you're not at max level, you have to be infinitely close to it before you can ignite the Saintess crystal. Hearing this, everyone was slightly stunned. Did this mean that Xiao Sou had not actually reached the maximum level, but was infinitely close to it? This gave them some comfort. Of course, they also understood that this result was slightly worse than reaching the maximum level, but in reality, it was not much worse, because this kind of talent was not something that everyone could reach. Today is the inauguration ceremony of the Saintess of the Light. Xiao Sou will light up the Saintess crystal on the spot and receive the Saintess baptism. Lu Hongwei's expression was serious and solemn. Today was a solemn day that would be recorded in the history of the Holy Assembly. Next, bring up the Saintess Crystal. Chapter 5381. A gigantic square stone pillar appeared quietly with the Saintess Crystal placed on top of it. As Lu Hongwei removed the red cloth, everyone finally saw the true appearance of the mysterious Saintess Crystal. With just one look, everyone's faces were filled with shock and amazement. A huge hexagonal crystal sat on top of the stone pillar. It looked very simple, but everyone was shocked when they saw it for the first time. They knew that it was definitely not an ordinary item. It must be a holy item. From the moment the Saintess Crystal appeared, everyone felt as if they were bathed in the power of light. They felt an indescribable sense of comfort, as if their bodies were being purified and cleansed. Many people even broke through bottlenecks that they had not broken through for a long time under this power. The golden sunlight shone on the Saintess Crystal, reflecting a dazzling and blazing light. Everyone could not take their eyes off it. So this is the Saintess Crystal. Bailey Hongzhuang's phoenix eyes narrowed slightly. The moment she saw the Saintess Crystal, a strange feeling appeared in her heart. It was intimate, mysterious, and yearning. She could not help but want to get closer to it. Even though she was so far away, she could still feel the pure energy. Master, this Saintess Crystal is really amazing. Look, many cultivators broke through in an instant. After the first cultivator broke through, more than 10 people broke through in the entire square. It was undoubtedly a spectacular scene. The cultivators who broke through were all overjoyed. None of them thought that they would receive such a great thing just by coming here to watch the show. It was simply too surprising. The other cultivators looked at them enviously. They were simply too lucky. With their cultivation, it was not easy to break through one level. Now they were able to receive such benefits just by coming to watch the succession ceremony. However, although everyone was envious of others who could break through directly, they were also satisfied. That was because the purifying power had also benefited them greatly. This is the holy item of our Holy Light Assembly, the Saintess Crystal. Whether it was Lu Hongwei or anyone else in the Holy Light Assembly, everyone was extremely sincere when they saw the Saintess Crystal. At this moment, everyone understood that the reason why the Holy Light Assembly had always been so aloof was probably related to this inheritance. At the very least, the other guilds did not have such a holy item. Before we proceed with the succession ceremony, I welcome all light attribute cultivators to try and light up the Saintess Crystal. Tong Yunshu smiled as she looked at the crowd below the high platform. This was something that the Sacred Assembly had already discussed beforehand. Such an important ceremony must be solemn and solemn. At the same time, it was necessary to let everyone understand that all of this was so strict that there was no element of deception. Upon hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes lit up. It seemed that this was the best opportunity that Shi Hongqiao had mentioned earlier. If she could light up the Saintess Crystal, then everything would become very interesting. However, after Tong Yunshu finished speaking, no one below the high platform moved. Since the Holy Light Assembly behaved so calmly, there naturally wouldn't be any problems. If he went up at this time, wouldn't it be the same as being Xiao Sou's stepping stone? Chapter 5382. Why would they go up and humiliate themselves when everyone was looking at them? The smile on Xiao Sou's lips grew even more radiant when she saw this. In fact, all of this was within their expectations. At a time like this, no one would be willing to sacrifice themselves for the sake of Xiao Sou and embarrass themselves in front of so many people. Hence, they had only mentioned this point and they would soon begin the succession ceremony. Just when everyone was sure that no one would step forward at this moment, a voice that was as clear as the sound of nature suddenly resounded, causing the atmosphere to stagnate. "Let me try." Everyone turned towards the source of the voice. When they saw the elegant and refined figure of a peerless beauty, they were first stunned before they understood what was going on. The initially silent plaza instantly exploded into a heated discussion. Everyone knew about the grudge between Xiao Sou and Bailey Hongzhuang. They had thought that Bailey Hongzhuang would keep a low profile today, but they never thought that she would make such a shocking move at a time like this. It seems that today's succession ceremony would be much more exciting than they had imagined. Bai Li Fan and the Bailey family were completely dumbfounded. They stared at their master in disbelief. Today was probably the day that the Bailey family would receive the most attention. Heavens, the master is actually going to attempt to light up the saint's crystal? Everyone's looking at us. What should we do? As cultivators from small families, they had a sense of inferiority when faced with so many outstanding young people in such an environment. They had only hoped to keep a low profile and avoid being noticed by others. Now, they had become the focus of everyone's attention. The voices of ridicule from before had become even louder. Bailey Hongzhuang really has a deep grudge with Xiao Shou. She's even willing to step forward at a time like this. Wouldn't it be more satisfying for Xiao Shou if she were to embarrass herself? You don't know this, but Bailey Hongzhuang's talent in the light attribute isn't simple either. Some say that she's even more powerful than Xiao Shou. Do you think that her talent can reach the maximum level? Forget I said anything. Bai Li Fan looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and suddenly understood. So this was what the clan head was talking about when he said that he had a great reputation. His heart skipped a beat. Patriarch, if you want to do such a shocking thing, you should at least inform me first. He was so scared that his heart almost stopped beating. Not only the Bailey family, but the Di family, the Lin family, the Murong family, and the other families that were on good terms with Bailey Hongzhuang were also dumbfounded. What was going on with Bailey Hongzhuang today? Bailey Hongzhuang instantly became the focus of everyone's attention. In the face of everyone's criticism, her expression remained the same. Her beautiful face was surrounded by a confident and elegant luster. Let me try. There shouldn't be a problem, right? Lu Hongwei looked at Bailey Hongzhuang, who was standing alone, and a trace of surprise and complexity flashed in his deep eyes. Then he nodded and said, "No problem, you're very welcome." Xiao Shou nodded as well. Her exquisitely made-up face was filled with smiles. She had thought that Bailey Hongzhuang would not be here. She never thought that Bailey Hongzhuang would actually appear in the Bailey family's group. Most importantly, Bailey Hongzhuang was so brainless today. She had come to provoke her at a time like this. Wasn't she looking for death? Chapter 5383. Lighting up the Holy Maiden Crystal was not an easy task. Master, are you really going? Bai Li Fan looked worriedly at Bailey Hongzhuang. Almost all the powers were gathered here today. If anything were to go wrong, it would not end well. Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at Bai Li Fan. Her calm eyes strangely made Bai Li Fan feel more at ease. Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. From today onwards, the Bailey family will no longer be nameless. Her ink-black phoenix eyes flashed with a bright and determined light. Back then, the Bailey family had gradually declined because of her fall. Now, she wanted the Bailey family to rise to glory under her leadership. Bailey Hongzhuang walked steadily and gracefully towards the high platform. Throughout the entire process, she was the focus of everyone's attention. Jun Lingxuan's lips curled into a cold smile. Bailey Hongzhuang is really a lunatic. She still can't recognize reality at a time like this. What a joke. Previously, he was also worried about this. However, ever since Xiao Shou lit up the Holy Maiden Crystal, they were completely at ease. No matter how stunning Bailey Hongzhuang's previous performance was, she was no longer a threat. Jun Hongqing furrowed his brows. He didn't know why, but from the moment Bailey Hongzhuang stepped forward, he suddenly had a bad feeling in his heart. He and Di Yujue had known each other for many years. Although their relationship had always been bad, most of the time, the person who knew him the best was his enemy. With Di Yujue's personality, he would definitely not allow his own family to do such a thing. Although the Di family members also looked extremely shocked, he had almost immediately looked at Di Yujue. He clearly did not see the slightest bit of shock in his expression. It was as if he already knew all this. Ling Sun, other people shouldn't be able to light up this holy maiden crystal, right? Junhong Cheng couldn't help but ask, wanting to confirm it again. Jun Lingxuan smiled and nodded. Of course, father, you don't have to worry. Not everyone can light up the holy maiden crystal. The Holy Light Assembly hasn't been able to find anyone to light it up for so many years. How can so many people appear at once? As far as I know, there is only one person who can light up the Saintess crystal at the same time. Now that Sei Wu could light it up, it directly cut off all other possibilities. If Bailey Hongzhuang goes up now, she will only embarrass herself. Just wait for the Di family to make a fool of themselves. Jun Lingxuan was immensely pleased with himself. Originally, the Di family had wanted to keep a low profile today. However, they actually dared to provoke them at a time like this. They were truly courting death. Hearing Jun Lingxuan's words, Junhong Qing finally relaxed. A smile once again appeared on his face. According to his guess, Diyu Jue probably didn't understand the situation of the Holy Light Assembly, so he was a bit too naive. Wanting to snatch the position of the Holy Maiden at a time like this was really a fool's dream. Tong Yunshu looked at the peerlessly beautiful figure in white, and the ominous premonition in her heart quietly magnified. Long before arriving at the square today, she had this thought in her heart. It was only when she saw that everything was going smoothly that she felt a bit more at ease. However, with the appearance of Bailey Hongzhuang, the uneasiness in her heart surfaced again. Chapter 5384. Beichen, isn't it a little too impulsive for Hongzhuang to go up like this? Di's eyes looked worriedly at the proud white figure in front of him and couldn't help but ask Di Beichen. Appearing at this time would not only give Xiao Sou a chance to humiliate her, but it might also offend the Radiant Sacred Assembly. Bailey Hongzhuang was a cultivator of the light attribute. Offending the Radiant Sacred Assembly wouldn't do her any good. Di Beichen glanced at Di's eyes, then smiled and said, "Don't worry, Hongzhuang knows what she's doing. Besides, didn't President Liu say that everyone is welcome to try?" That's true, but Di's eyes frowned. Beichen was usually quite smart. Why was he so muddle-headed at this time? As Bailey Hongzhuang got closer and closer to the stage, the smile on Xiao Sou's face grew wider and wider. With a leap, Bailey Hongzhuang gracefully appeared on the stage. If Xiao Sou had monopolized all the glory before, then with Bailey Hongzhuang standing not far from her, the originally dazzling Xiao Sou dimmed a little. Bailey Hongzhuang was wearing a simple and elegant white dress, embellished with stars and moons. Although it wasn't as noble and gorgeous as Xiao Sou's dress, it had a different kind of otherworldly elegance. She was like a lotus rising from the water, as elegant as a lotus. Her exquisite facial features were impeccable. Everyone knew that Bailey Hongzhuang was a top-notch beauty. Even if she didn't dress up, she was already stunning beyond compare. If she did dress up, who knew how stunning she would be? Xiao Sou, who was originally extremely pleased with herself, noticed the change in everyone's attitude. A trace of resentment appeared in her black eyes, but it disappeared in an instant. Because soon she would see Bailey Hongzhuang make a fool of herself in front of everyone. In a place where everyone was gathered, once she made a fool of herself, it wouldn't be easy to recover. Lu Hongwei smiled and looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. "Miss Bailey, you're welcome to try." Bailey Hongzhuang bowed respectfully. "Sorry to disturb President Liu. Because I'm also a cultivator of the light attribute, I would like to see this sacred object up close." "Such a sacred object. I'm sure it will be more enlightening for us to see it up close." "That's right." Lu Hongwei nodded. The Saintess crystal contains the purest light energy. If a cultivator of the light attribute comes in contact with it, it may increase their understanding of the light attribute. As these words, all the cultivators of the light were stunned, and their eyes. If they could feel the purification and cleansing of the Saintess crystal from so far away, wouldn't the benefits be even more obvious once they got closer? How difficult to increase their understanding of attributes. They were all too clear about this. Now that there was an opportunity in front of them, they actually ignored it. Compared to Bailey Hongzhuang, who was already standing beside the Saintess Crystal on the high platform, they suddenly felt that they were too stupid. Bailey Hongzhuang was the real example of great wisdom appearing to be stupidity. It may seem like a joke, but in fact, she had obtained the exact benefits. In fact, after hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Lu Hongwei and the rest of the deacons of the Holy Light Assembly understood. So Bailey Hongzhuang didn't deliberately come to find trouble. She just wanted to see the Saintess Crystal up close, so there was nothing wrong with that. Chapter 5385. In the blink of an eye, Bailey Hongzhuang's seemingly stupid decision had turned into the smartest move in everyone's eyes. Xiao Shou saw that Bailey Hongzhuang had changed everyone's view with just a few words, and she was speechless. Did these fellows not have brains? With one look, she knew that Bailey Hongzhuang had made up an excuse. She actually believed it. Since Miss Bailey wants to try and see if you can light up the Holy Maiden Crystal, then go ahead and give it a try. Xiao Shou's eyes were filled with eagerness. She wanted to grab this opportunity to deal a fatal blow to Bailey Hongzhuang. Ever since she knew Bailey Hongzhuang, she knew that she was eloquent and could even make a dead person come back alive. If she allowed Bailey Hongzhuang to continue speaking like this, she was afraid that even if she failed, when she got off the stage, it would not be a big deal in everyone's eyes. She could not let such a thing happen. Tong Yunshu took the opportunity to say, "Miss Bailey, go ahead and give it a try. You only need to circulate the light energy in your body." Lu Hongwei smiled as he introduced, "The Holy Maiden Crystal will absorb your energy. The real Holy Maiden of Light will be able to light up the Holy Maiden Crystal. If it was anyone else, it would not be possible." Lu Hongwei reminded, this was also to let Bailey Hongzhuang understand that it was impossible for her to light up the Holy Maiden Crystal. However, Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly said, "President Lu, if I light up this Holy Maiden Crystal, what will happen?" When these words came out, everyone was dumbfounded. What kind of joke was this? Didn't you go up to feel the Holy Maiden Crystal? Did you really think that you could light it up? This Bailey Hongzhuang really does not use her brain when she speaks. Just think about it and you know that it is impossible for her to light it up. That's right, isn't she just making things difficult for herself? It will be hard for her to get off the stage later. The cultivators of the 100 Lane clan lowered their heads to the ground under everyone's gaze. "Patriarch, you have to think about us when you speak. You may be able to withstand such gazes, but we really can't." At this moment, the D family and the Lin family were also receiving everyone's mocking gazes. However, Diu Jue and the others looked calm, as if they didn't care about this at all. Lu Hongwei and the others did not expect Bailey Hongzhuang to suddenly ask such a question. For a moment, they did not know how to answer. They had never imagined such an outcome. Xiao Shou saw that Bailey Hongzhuang was still so arrogant at this time, and the resentment in her eyes grew stronger. "Miss Bailey, the President has already said that only the Holy Maiden Crystal can light up." Xiao Shou deliberately emphasized the word "only." "Of course, if you can think it over, then I'll give you my position as the Holy Maiden of Light." "Okay," Bailey Hongzhuang replied. "What? Okay?" Xiao Shou almost spat out a mouthful of blood. "Did you not understand what I meant?" Without waiting for Xiao Shou to continue speaking, the elemental energy in Bailey Hongzhuang's body surged and flowed towards the Holy Maiden Crystal. Everyone's gaze fell on Bailey Hongzhuang and the Holy Maiden Crystal. Even though they had already expected this outcome, they could not help but be curious. After all, there would always be suspense until the end. Xiao Shou looked at Bailey Hongzhuang mockingly. It was impossible for the Holy Maiden Crystal to light up. She was waiting to see how Bailey Hongzhuang would deal with this situation. Chapter 5386. Everyone's gaze was fixed on the Holy Maiden Crystal. Everyone wanted to know if the Holy Maiden Crystal would react. By the time Bailey Hongzhuang retracted her hands, the Holy Maiden crystal had already calmed down and did not react at all. Seeing this scene, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyebrows wrinkled slightly. Could it be that the position of the Holy Maiden of Light really belonged to Xiao Seiwu? Even if she was more talented than Xiao Sou and had a purer elemental energy, she still couldn't snatch this position away? It's indeed a failure. The Holy Maiden of Light has searched for so many years and finally found Xiao Sou. Naturally, there can't be a mistake. Otherwise, wouldn't it become a joke? Bailey Hongzhuang is really in a difficult position now. She might really think that she can light up the Holy Maiden crystal, haha. Mocking laughter rang out unabashedly. The entire square immediately erupted into a heated discussion. This was the most interesting scene they had seen today. Di Beichen's eyes darkened when he saw this. His handsome brows were tightly knitted together. He could not help but feel his heart ache as he looked at the thin figure on the high platform. Then, Di Beichen stood up and walked towards the high platform. Seeing Di Beichen's actions, everyone present was stunned. They immediately understood how protective Di Beichen was of his wife. If it was an ordinary person, his wife would have caused him and his entire family to lose face. At this point in time, he would probably not be willing to pay any attention to her. However, Di Beichen did not take this to heart. He only had Bailey Hongzhuang in his heart. Although many people felt that Di Beichen's blind love for his wife was a little foolish, almost all the women were extremely envious of Bailey Hongzhuang. So what if she had lost face? At least, her husband had always doted on her. If it was any other man, how many of them could do the same? Diyu Jue, you've really played to the gallery this time. You've made such a big joke. Junhong Qing knew that after seeing this result, he finally heaved a sigh of relief. There was a hint of mockery between his brows. Don't tell me you think that your daughter-in-law can become the Holy Maiden just because she's of the light attribute? He knew very well how important that inheritance was to the Di family. It was precisely because of this that he was so worried when he saw Bailey Hongzhuang's actions today. Fortunately, that situation did not happen and it was impossible for it to happen. Hearing this, Diyu Jue looked indifferently at Junhong Qing. If we hadn't taken the initiative, we would have given it to you. Since he felt that he had picked up a big bargain, then he should keep a low profile. He couldn't possibly go around announcing that he had picked up a bargain, right? Besides, I don't care at all. Do you think anyone would believe you at a time like this? Junhong Qing did not care. Even though Diyu Jue's face did not reveal any clues, Junhong Qing could still sense the guilt and nervousness hidden in the other party's heart. How many years has it been? How many years have we waited for this day? Finally, we can see the dawn of defeating the Di family. Xiao Sou's eyes were filled with excitement. Ever since she had met Bailey Hongzhuang, she had never defeated Bailey Hongzhuang in such a direct manner. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Bailey Hongzhuang had already lost to her. This was an irrefutable fact. Chapter 5387. Back then, everyone had firmly believed that Bailey Hongzhuang's talent in the light attribute was stronger than hers. Even though she was the next saint of the Light Clan, she had felt that it was a form of mockery. But now, everyone understood that the gap between their light attribute was incomparable. No one would compare them in this aspect anymore. In the future, Bailey Hongzhuang would have to take a detour whenever she sees her. Miss Bailey, it looks like your wishful thinking has gone wrong. You're unable to light up the Saint of the Light Clan's crystal, so naturally, I can't give you the position of the Saint of the Light Clan. Xiao Sou's face was filled with a joyous smile, but her eyes were filled with disgust and satisfaction. Every dog has its day, Bailey Hongzhuang also has her day. However, just as Xiao Sou had spoken, everyone's eyes were suddenly attracted to the Saint of the Light Clan's crystal. Look, the Saint of the Light Clan's crystal seems to be changing. Once she said this, everyone turned to look at the Saint of the Light Clan's crystal. They saw that the Saint of the Light Clan's crystal, which had been calm all this time, suddenly emitted layers of light, and a bright light quietly appeared. This light gradually expanded and became increasingly resplendent. When Di Baichen walked up to the high platform, he noticed that the Saint of the Light Clan's crystal had suddenly shone brightly. His tightly pursed lips suddenly rose, and his incomparably handsome face became even more bewitching. Tong Yunshu's worried heart had not been able to relax for a moment when she sensed the change in the Saint of the Light Clan's crystal. When she raised her head, her expression instantly froze. Xiao Shou was standing in front of the Saint of the Light Clan's crystal. Just a second ago, she had been immensely pleased with herself as she taunted Bailey Hongzhuang. However, in the next second, she noticed everyone's shocked gazes and could not help but stiffly turn around. When she saw the Saint of the Light Clan's crystal emitting a blazing light, she felt as if she had been struck by lightning. She stood dazedly on the spot, her face filled with disbelief. What's going on? Bailey Hongzhuang has really lit up the Saint of the Light Clan's crystal? Wasn't it said that only the Saint of the Light Clan's crystal could light it up? Bailey Hongzhuang lit it up right away. Doesn't that mean that Bailey Hongzhuang can also become the Saint of Light? Earlier, many people said that Bailey Hongzhuang's talent was better than Xiao Shou's. Now, it seems that it was all true. Today's situation has become interesting. I wonder who will be the Saint of Light's successor? The sudden turn of events was beyond everyone's expectations. Everyone from the Holy Assembly stared at this scene in a daze. They were shocked and exclaimed. Lu Hongwei's heart was already in turmoil. All these years, in order to let Xiao Shou light up the Holy Maiden crystal, they had thought of all kinds of method. It wasn't until a few days ago that Xiao Shou was able to light up the Saintess crystal, but it was only slightly brighter. Compared to the light emitted by the Saintess crystal, it was just a drop in the ocean. The Saintess crystal's transformation did not stop there. After it had emitted a resplendent light, the light gradually changed and began to emit a rainbow light. Under the sunlight, the dazzling rainbow light was like the most precious treasure in the world, making it hard for people to take their eyes off it. This is, Lu Hongwei's hands trembled slightly, expressing the excitement in his heart. This should be the true appearance of the Saintess crystal after it has been lit up. Chapter 5388. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into an enchanting and confident smile. Her judgment was right, she could light up the Holy Maiden crystal. Her master was the Holy Maiden of Light. As a disciple, how could she face her master if she was inferior to others? Shi Hongqiao, who was at the back, did not know what to say. When Bailey Hongzhuang had announced that she could light up the Holy Maiden crystal, although he had expressed his belief, he still had some doubts in his heart. This was because as a member of the Holy Assembly, he knew all too well how difficult it was to light up the Holy Maiden crystal. Even though Xiao Shou had worked hard for so many years, she had only managed to light it up a little. Therefore, he could not help but be suspicious. But after witnessing the radiance emanating from the Saintess crystal, she realized that she had underestimated the situation. Bailey Hongzhuang was the real Holy Maiden of Light. Her talent in the light attribute was simply heaven-defying. The deacon of the Holy Assembly, who had been persuaded by Shi Hongqiao to help Bailey Hongzhuang, was also stunned. He had initially wanted to help Shi Hongqiao because he could not bear to see the Xiao family occupying the absolute position in the Holy Assembly. Once Xiao Shou became the Holy Maiden of Light, their position would be greatly threatened. However, he was surprised to find that he had made the right bet this time. Although the result had not been confirmed, even an idiot would know that Bailey Hongzhuang was the real Holy Maiden of Light. Previously, when Xiao Shou had lit up the Holy Maiden crystal, he had also noticed. How could the light of a firefly dare to compete with the brilliance of the sun and the moon? The difference between the two was not small at all. No matter how powerful the Xiao family was, they could not cover the sky with one hand. Furthermore, the Di family's power did not lose to the Xiao family at all. In an instant, the atmosphere had become exceptionally strange. Previously, the Holy Assembly had made it very clear that only the Holy Maiden of Light could light up the Holy Maiden crystal. No one else could light it up. However, only Bailey Hongzhuang had walked up to the high platform and had easily lit up the Holy Maiden crystal. This was awkward. Was it because anyone could light up the Saintess crystal, or was Xiao Shou not the real Saintess of the Light? If Xiao Shou wasn't the Saintess of Light, wouldn't that be a huge mistake? No matter how one looked at it, this was not something that could be resolved in a short period of time. Xiao Shou stared at the scene in a daze. She couldn't believe that all of this was real. She couldn't understand why the Saintess crystal had undergone such a huge change after Bailey Hongzhuang had injected her power into it. This was completely different from what the president had told her. Her face gradually turned pale, and her hands and feet began to turn cold. An uncontrollable thought lingered in her mind. This was the moment where she was the center of attention. Now, all the limelight had been stolen by Bailey Hongzhuang. She was more worried that Bailey Hongzhuang would take away her position as the Saint of Light. Once Bailey Hongzhuang becomes the Saintess of Light, what would she do in the future? Recalling what Bailey Hongzhuang had said earlier, she felt that Bailey Hongzhuang had premeditated all of this. Bailey Hongzhuang had already known that this would happen and had purposely come here to slap her in the face. Xiao Shou stared venomously at Bailey Hongzhuang. A bone-deep hatred burned in her heart, almost burning away her rationality and driving her crazy. Chapter 5389. In the face of Xiao Shou's curses, Bailey Hongzhuang remained extremely calm. Her delicate, jade-like face curled into a faint smile. Her already unparalleled features were now even more enchanting and bewitching. Xiao Shou, none of this belongs to you. You've been hogging this title for so many years. That's enough. Bailey Hongzhuang calmly replied. You! Xiao Shou stared at Bailey Hongzhuang. She was about to explode from anger. This damned woman, how dare she treat me like this? Below the high platform, the atmosphere was just as lively. If Bai Li Fan and the others had previously been particularly worried about Bailey Hongzhuang's actions, their hearts were now completely at ease after witnessing this scene. Patriarch, you're really amazing when you don't make a sound. What's going on? Is the Master going to become the Saint of Light? I think so. Isn't it said that whoever can light up the Saint's crystal will become the Saint of Light? If the Master of Light really becomes the Saint of Light, our status in the Master of Light will be greatly elevated. The disciples' faces lit up with joy. No one had ever thought that such a good thing would happen. Becoming the Saint of Light would mean that she would have an inseparable connection with the Holy Assembly of Light. Their Master of Light would have an incomparably powerful backer aside from the D family. This way, even if they were a small Master of Light, no one would dare to plot against them. Over the years, due to their Master of Light's gradual decline, they had been surviving in the cracks. Only they knew how anxious and aggrieved they had been. Now all of this had a chance to change. Once they thought of that situation, they could not hide the excitement in their hearts. Junhong Qing, it seems that you've been too complacent just now. Di Yujue's lips curled into a small smile as he stared mockingly at Junhong Qing. Actually, he was extremely shocked as well. Even though Bailey Hongzhuang had previously said that she would do this, he was still a little worried because the possibility of success was simply too small. However, he did not expect that all of this would actually succeed. The light emitted by the Saintess crystal was extremely bright. Even though he didn't know what Xiao Shou looked like when she lit up the Saintess crystal, he could roughly tell from President Lu's expression that Xiao Shou probably couldn't reach that level. Thinking of this, he was already confident of victory. As the head of an aristocratic family, he still had this bit of foresight. Even if the relationship between the Xiao family and the Holy Assembly of Light was complicated and not easily shaken, the position of the Holy Maiden of Light was not something that could be achieved through power alone. Hearing Di Yujua's words, Junhong Cheng's face was as gloomy as water. His heart had already turned cold when he heard this change. Now that he heard this ridicule, he only felt extremely embarrassed. After all, he was still mocking Di Yujue a second ago, and in the next second, he was slapped in the face. This change was too fast. Di Yujue, don't be too complacent. Everything hasn't been decided yet. Junhong Cheng still had some confidence in his heart. Even if Bailey Hongzhuang could light up the Saintis crystal, it would only be a draw at the moment. Speaking of which, the scales of victory were still leaning towards their side. In contrast to Junhong Cheng's self-consolation, Jun Lingxuan's heart had already sunk to the bottom. Chapter 5390. Everyone from the Xiao family was supposed to be incomparably glorious today, but the sudden turn of events had caused the smiles on their faces to become unusually comical and awkward. Master, what should So do now? Madame Zhao's face was filled with anxiety. This Bailey Hongzhuang is really not easy to deal with. She actually ruined such an important day. Xiao Yanlong's gaze was malicious and ruthless. If he could, he wished that he could rush up and crush Bailey Hongzhuang to death. He was extremely disgusted with Bailey Hongzhuang, but he thought that the conflict between the younger generation should be left to the younger generation to resolve themselves. After all, Xiao So herself also needed some space to grow. If he helped her solve everything, then there would be no meaning in her growth. However, he never thought that Bailey Hongzhuang would be so difficult to deal with. The destruction from before was already unbearable, and now she had actually gone to this extent. Don't be anxious now. Let's see what the president has to say. The atmosphere on the high platform instantly froze and time seemed to have stopped. Even Lu Hongwei did not know what to do for a moment. Master, what should we do now? Xiao So anxiously transmitted her voice to Tong Yunshu. The current her was already out of her wits, and she subconsciously looked for the person she trusted the most. Tong Yunshu also felt that this situation was very troublesome. This scene had exceeded everyone's expectations. She had never thought about how to deal with this if something like this were to happen. In fact, her mind was also blank. The only thing she remembered was that her premonition was actually so accurate. So, calm down first. Don't panic. Once you panic, you will fall into Bailey Hongzhuang's trap. The situation is still uncertain. Perhaps the change in the Saintis crystal was not caused by Bailey Hongzhuang but a change in her. It won't be too late to wait for the president to make a decision. Hearing Tong Yunshu's words, Xiao So seemed to have found her backbone and her trembling legs once again stabilized. That's right, everything was not set in stone yet. Xiao So comforted herself. She would not lose like this. President Liu, now that my wife has lit up the Holy Maiden crystal, does this mean that someone is going to abdicate? Di Bei Chen's voice was magnetic and pleasant to listen to, breaking the stiff situation on the high platform. Only then did Lu Hongwei come back to his senses. Countless thoughts flashed through his mind. According to the legacy of the Holy Light Assembly, there should only be one person who can light up the Holy Maiden crystal. This was what he couldn't understand the most. Seeing this, Xiao So couldn't help but say, President, maybe the changes that happened after I lit up the Saintis crystal was just a coincidence. It has nothing to do with Bailey Hongzhuang. That's possible, but Lu Hongwei pondered. If it was a coincidence, then wouldn't it be too much of a coincidence? Although he couldn't deny the existence of such a coincidence, the probability was too low. President, we haven't seen Miss Xiao light up the Holy Maiden crystal. Why don't you let us see it? Bailey Hongzhuang suggested with a faint smile. If it's really just a coincidence, we'll know once we compare. When these words came out, everyone present nodded in agreement. Compared to other situations, this was undoubtedly the best method. Chapter 5391. Xiao So was eager to give it a try as well. She believes that everything was just as her master had said. This must have been a change in the sacred maiden crystal, and had nothing to do with Bailey Hongzhuang. As long as she could light up the sacred maiden crystal as well, they could pretend that nothing had happened. Seeing that Xiao So had no objections, Lu Hongwei nodded. Since that's the case, Lady Xiao, you may try to light it up. At this moment, Lu Hongwei held back a little more when he spoke. At this moment, he did not know who was the true sacred maiden between Xiao Sou and Bailey Hongzhuang, so he could not rashly use this title on either of them. Xiao Sou naturally sensed this as well, and her gaze became even more malicious. It's all because of this hateful woman. She had actually caused my position to be threatened. Xiao Sou walked towards the sacred maiden crystal as quickly as she could. She wanted to use her powers to prove her identity. Xiao Sou's gaze remained fixed on the sacred maiden crystal as she continued to pour her power into it. However, the sacred maiden crystal did not react even after she had retracted her hand. No one found this strange because when Bailey Hongzhuang had tried to light it up, the sacred spirit crystal had reacted rather slowly as well. Hence, everyone had waited patiently. However, as the wait grew longer and longer, the crowd's expressions became more and more complicated. Why hasn't the sacred maiden crystal reacted at all after such a long time? Could it be that Xiao Sou is unable to light up the sacred maiden crystal? Compared to Bailey Hongzhuang's previous situation, it seems that too much time has passed. The crowd looked at each other. With the previous example, they did not dare to speak carelessly. Otherwise, wouldn't it be awkward if they were to say that Xiao Sou was unable to light it up and she succeeded in the next second? The entire plaza was exceptionally quiet. Everyone stared at the sacred maiden crystal, waiting for the next change. Time ticked by, but the Saintess crystal didn't react at all, as if it had never sensed anything. Xiao Sou's face grew paler as time passed. She looked at the Saintess crystal in disbelief. She couldn't understand why she could light it up before, but now she couldn't. Master, what's going on? Xiao Sou looked at Tong Yunshu, her trembling voice filled with panic and urgency. Tong Yunshu's expression wasn't much better than Xiao Sou's. Even though she had been the vice president for so many years, this situation was still out of her expectations. She thought for a moment, then turned to look at Lu Hongwei. President, could it be that something happened to the Saintess crystal just now, and that's why it can't light up now? Lu Hongwei frowned. Although the Saintess crystal was their holy item, they did not know much about it. The only thing they knew was that the Saintess of Light could light it up. Given the current situation, he needed some time to think. Thinking of this, Lu Hongwei looked at the deacons of the sacred assembly nearby and asked, "What do you think?" President, in my opinion, I'm afraid that Miss Bailey is the real Saintess of Light. This situation is already very obvious. Shi Hongqiao clasped his hands together and expressed his opinion. Chapter 5392. Whoever could light up the Holy Maiden crystal would be the Holy Maiden of the Light. Now that Bailey Hongzhuang had lit it up and Xiao Sou had not, wasn't it obvious who was superior? Seeing that Shi Hongqiao was the first to stand out, Xiao Sou immediately glared at him fiercely. She remembered this guy and understood that he must be using this opportunity to avenge his personal grudge. President, we still haven't figured out the changes in the Holy Maiden crystal. In my opinion, why don't we pause today's succession ceremony and wait until we figure it out before making a decision? Another deacon spoke up. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, if they continued to study here, the situation would become somewhat complicated. Hearing that, Xiao Yanlong could not continue watching. With just a glance, the Xiao clan deacon spoke up. President, today's matter is only a sudden change in the Holy Maiden crystal. This does not mean that there is anything wrong with Miss Zhao's identity as the Holy Maiden. Could it be that just because of this little coincidence, we're sure that our judgment all these years was wrong? In an instant, the deacons who were on good terms with the Xiao clan all agreed. If Xiao Sou lost her position as the Holy Maiden of the Light and was replaced by her enemy, Bailey Hongzhuang, they would have a hard time in the future. Seeing that, Shi Hongqiao glanced at the other deacons and a few deacons stood out as well. President, I think that you should be happy about what happened today. At least before the succession ceremony, we found the real Holy Maiden of the Light. This is all God's will. It doesn't matter if we were wrong before. As long as we figure it out now, it's not too late. Seeing that everyone had different opinions, Lu Hongwei gradually formed his own thoughts. Everyone, quiet down. The people who were arguing with each other immediately quieted down and looked at Lu Hongwei. In the next moment, Lu Hongwei turned to the various major forces below the high platform. Regarding today's situation, I also feel very guilty. I've let everyone see a farce. As soon as he said that, the people below the high platform stopped their discussion. As the president of the Holy Light Assembly, Lu Hongwei had always been a senior that everyone respected. Although this matter was indeed beyond everyone's expectations, it did not affect their respect for Lu Hongwei. The confirmation of the Saintess is extremely important to the Holy Assembly of Light, so we must get to the bottom of this. Otherwise, not only would we be blaspheming the Saintess, we would also be letting down everyone in the Holy Assembly. Today, I may have wasted a lot of your time, so I hope everyone can forgive me. Guild Master, we're fine. You don't have to worry about it. Below the stage, the major forces expressed their opinions one after another. Compared to their attitude of watching a good show, Lu Hongwei's feelings were undoubtedly more complicated. At this moment, when he said such words, everyone felt very understanding. Regardless of whether this was a coincidence or not, the Holy Light Assembly had to find out. Thank you for your understanding. Lu Hongwei bowed deeply, his gentle and benevolent face filled with seriousness and solemnity. Are there any other light attribute cultivators who are willing to try and see if they can light up the Saintess crystal? Lu Hongwei asked. Hearing this, everyone immediately understood Lu Hongwei's idea. He wanted to eliminate them one by one through this idea. Before Bailey Hongzhuang appeared, no one was willing to fight. However, now that they knew that being in close proximity to the Saintess crystal was very beneficial to them, they naturally wouldn't miss this opportunity. Chapter 5393. Several light-attributed cultivators walked up the stage and came into close contact with the Saintess crystal, hoping that they would be able to light it up. In the past, everyone knew that the position of Saintess belonged to Xiao Sou, so no one had the thought of snatching it. But now it was different. This had become a chance for anyone to try. As long as they could light it up, they could easily become the Saintess of Light, a proud daughter of heaven. Xiao Sou looked at the people who came forward to try, her eyes filled with ridicule. These motley crew were also looking at the Saintess crystal. They were simply dreaming. Bailey Hongzhuang was very calm. Di Beichen had already walked to her side, his handsome face filled with a faint smile. Wife, our judgment was indeed correct. You are the real Saintess of Light. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. It seems that the Holy Assembly doesn't know much about the Saintess crystal, so they can only check it one by one. It's only a matter of time. No one can light it up, but only you can light it up. Then everyone will know the truth. Di Beichen's face was calm. They had already planned all of this. They were just here to watch Xiao Sou and the others slowly give up. Beichen, there's one thing I don't understand. Bailey Hongzhuang frowned. Everything else could be explained, but there was one thing that she couldn't understand. I don't understand why Xiao Sou could light up the Saintess crystal before? That's right. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. Isn't this very strange? Since only the Saintess can light it up, why can Xiao Sou light it up? Did you notice the change in everyone's expression after you lit up the Saintess crystal? Bailey Hongzhuang thought for a moment. Everyone was very surprised. According to my judgment, Xiao Sou's previous illumination of the Saintess crystal wasn't like this. Perhaps she didn't really illuminate the Saintess crystal at all, but because her light attribute talent was stronger than ordinary cultivators, the Saintess crystal had a slight change. That's possible. If Xiao Sou's innate talent is already very close to the maximum level, maybe the Holy Tablet of Light last time will be of great help to her. After Di Baichen mentioned it, Bailey Hongzhuang immediately understood. Therefore, we can watch everyone try with peace of mind. The Xiao clan can no longer change this matter. Di Baichen's voice was full of confidence. The Saint of Light originally belonged to Hongzhuang. Xiao Sou had occupied the position for so long, and it was time for her to hand it over. Even when several cultivators tried, not a single one of them was able to cause any change to the Saintess crystal. Seeing this scene, Xiao Sou couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. President, the Saintess crystal must have undergone a change on its own. It has nothing to do with anyone else. That's right, President. Our sacred assembly still has many things we don't understand about the Saintess crystal. Why don't we wait until after the succession ceremony to study it? Tong Yunshu also spoke up. Vice President, it's too early for you to say that. I feel that the Saintess crystal was lit up by Miss Bailey. The possibility of that kind of coincidence is too small. Shi Hongqiao stood up. He couldn't let Tong Yunshu and the others casually gloss over this matter. Chapter 5394. Xiao Sou glared hatefully at Shi Hongqiao and the others. These damned bastards were obviously trying to take advantage of this opportunity to push her off the stage. When I get back today, I must find a way to kill these bastards. Wife, why don't you try again? Di Baichen suddenly asked. Lu Hongwei's eyes lit up. Actually, he was thinking the same thing. If Bailey Hongzhuang could light up the Holy Maiden crystal again, it would prove that everything that had happened before was not a coincidence. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Lu Hongwei and asked, President Lu, can I? Lu Hongwei nodded and said, Of course. Following Bailey Hongzhuang's second attempt, the atmosphere around them became tense. This time, everyone would know who the Holy Maiden was. However, as Bailey Hongzhuang's hands approached the Holy Maiden crystal, a slight surge of energy caused the Holy Maiden crystal to emit the dazzling rainbow light from before, dazzling everyone's eyes. A confident smile appeared on Bailey Hongzhuang's delicate face. She raised her eyebrows and looked proudly at Xiao Sou. Her red lips parted slightly and she mouthed, The outcome has been decided. Xiao Sou lost her balance and stumbled back 2 steps. She stared blankly at the scene before her and her face turned ashen. Impossible, this is impossible. Everyone in the audience was extremely amazed as they looked at the proud figure on the high platform. They did not expect that Bailey Hongzhuang was the real Saint Lady of the Light. This was simply too shocking. Previously, Xiao Sou could at least rely on her identity as the Holy Maiden to compete with Bailey Hongzhuang. Now that she doesn't even have this identity, how is she going to challenge Bailey Hongzhuang in the future? Xiao Sou is really done for. Without this identity, she's just an ordinary young lady from an aristocratic family. The Di family's eyes are really too shrewd. They can actually see that Bailey Hongzhuang has the most potential. They're the real winners, ah. Di Yujua's eyes shone brightly. A sense of pride arose spontaneously. Whether it was his son or his daughter-in-law, he was extremely satisfied. This was simply too wonderful. President, there's no need to doubt anymore. Miss Bailey is the real Holy Maiden. Shi Hongqiao said with a smile. Lu Hongwei nodded. At this moment, he no longer had any doubts. Indeed. I've searched for so many years, but I still got it wrong. The real Holy Maiden is in the lower realm. No wonder I spent so many years searching. Lu Hongwei sighed faintly, but he was relieved in his heart. Although there was a huge blunder today, and the Holy Assembly of Light's reputation was tarnished, they still managed to clarify everything during the succession ceremony. If he to find out the truth to Bailey Hongzhuang, then he would not to find Bailey Hongzhuang. In the next moment, Lu Hongwei announced to the crowd, I now announce that Bailey Hongzhuang is the real Holy Maiden. As soon as he said this, the crowd was shocked. Then, thunderous applause rang out, followed by congratulatory voices. Hearing this, Xiao Sou stumbled and almost lost her footing. Fortunately, Tong Yunshu supported her. However, her eyes were bloodshot. She shouted angrily and ferociously, "Impossible! This is impossible!" Seeing Xiao Sou's crazed look, the crowd looked askance. This was a huge blow to her. Chapter 5395. President, don't be muddle-headed. Xiao Sou grabbed Lu Hongwei's hand and pleaded. She couldn't lose all of this. Absolutely not. Looking at Xiao Sou's hysterical appearance, Lu Hongwei was somewhat apologetic. "So, I was wrong before, so it caused such a big misunderstanding. I'm really sorry. Don't worry, if there is a chance, I will find a way to compensate you, but in this matter, it can't be changed." Lu Hongwei sighed. He also understood that Xiao Sou would find it difficult to accept such a thing. However, this matter was not something he could decide. The Holy Maiden Crystal had chosen the Holy Maiden of Light. "Vice President, take good care of her," Lu Hongwei ordered. Tong Yunshu quickly supported Xiao Sou. She was also anxious and worried, "So you must hold on." At this point, as the vice president, she understood that this matter was already irreversible. In order to prevent Xiao Sou from continuing to lose control of her emotions, the best way was to take her back first. However, Xiao Sou was not willing at all. She shouted, "No! There must be a mistake. Bailey Hongzhuang can't have a max-level talent. So let's go back first." Tong Yunshu pulled Xiao Sou. Under the watchful eyes of the public, it would have a bad impact on Xiao Sou. "Don't pull me!" Xiao Sou shouted heartbreakingly. "I don't believe it!" Xiao Yanlong was already unable to sit still. At this moment, seeing Xiao Sou crying heartbreakingly, he directly jumped onto the high platform, his face serious and angry. "President Lu, how can you just say that it was a mistake and forget about it?" Xiao Yanlong questioned. "So is right. Since the Holy Maiden of Light needs to have a max-level talent, unless Bailey Hongzhuang really has it, it is impossible to convince the public." "Patriarch Xiao, I'm really sorry about this matter. I didn't think that I would make such a mistake. However, you saw the situation clearly just now," Lu Hongwei explained guiltily. He didn't want things to turn out this way. He didn't expect that after searching for the saint for so many years, he would end up in such a mess. However, before Lu Hongwei could finish his words, the cultivators from the Xiao family and the Jun family began to protest. Xiao Sou glared fiercely at Bailey Hongzhuang. "Unless you have a max-level talent, you can't be the real Saint of Light." If it was anything else, Bailey Hongzhuang might be a little worried, but when she heard this request, she didn't care at all. This guy really wouldn't give up until all hope was gone. Max-level talent? She was. Xiao Sou stared at Bailey Hongzhuang. She had already heard about Bailey Hongzhuang's situation in Rong'an City. It was said that there were impurities in Bailey Hongzhuang's talent, but a small place like Rong'an City didn't know how to judge the result. Lu Hongwei thought about it again and again. Now that the entire venue was in an uproar, if this matter was not calmed down, he was afraid that everyone would not accept it. "In that case, let's test the talent on the spot." As soon as these words came out, Xiao Sou stopped struggling. However, her red eyes were still filled with hatred. Her hands were clenched into fists, her nails were already embedded in her flesh. Blood stained her fingers, but she didn't feel it. The pain couldn't hide her hatred and anger. Chapter 5396. A transparent crystal ball was slowly placed on another square pillar. Everyone present was familiar with this crystal ball. It was a device used to test one's innate talent. When Shangguan Yingying saw this crystal ball, a trace of worry appeared in her eyes. Ziren, when Hong Zhuang tested her innate talent, this crystal ball also showed the darkness attribute. If we test her innate talent in front of so many people, won't it cause a disturbance? Originally, Bailey Hongzhuang was most worried that others would find out about her innate talent. Once everyone found out that she was a cultivator of both the darkness and light attributes, Who knew what kind of uproar it would cause? It was likely that such a thing had never happened in the entire upper realm. Ziren was also somewhat worried about this. He looked at Di Baichen and Shangguan Yingying on the high platform. However, the two of them looked calm and did not reveal any clues. I don't know either. I hope that Hong Zhuang and Di Baichen will have a way to deal with this. This Xiao Sou really won't give up until all hope is gone. Even at this point, she still can cause some trouble. Diu Jue was also aware of this situation. When Bailey Hongzhuang had displayed her innate talent for them, he had already noticed this. If everyone really found out, the situation would become complicated. At the very least, the Xiao family would definitely not let go of this opportunity to target Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang, you can take the test. Xiao Sou looked coldly at Bailey Hongzhuang. She bit her red lips and widened her blood-red eyes. She wanted nothing more than to cut Bailey Hongzhuang into pieces. Miss Bailey, you can take the test, Tong Yunshu said with a similarly cold expression. In fact, she also did not believe that Bailey Hongzhuang had such an innate talent. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen looked at each other. Then, they walked in front of the crystal ball and poured light energy into it. Very soon, a dazzling light burst out from the crystal ball, and in an instant, the crystal ball was filled with the power of light. Lu Hongwei heaved a sigh of relief when he saw this. He looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a hint of surprise. Max-level talent. This was a true max-level talent. In the past, Xiao Sou had always been unable to achieve this, and they had always tried to make up for it. He had only thought that the conditions were too harsh. Only now did he realize that the real Saint of Light could easily achieve this step. When Xiao Sou saw that Bailey Hongzhuang really had a max-level talent, she was stunned for a moment. However, she didn't give up hope. Instead, she continued to wait for Bailey Hongzhuang's attributes to appear. As long as the impurities appeared, everything could be reconsidered. However, she waited for a long time until Bailey Hongzhuang withdrew her hands. When no impurities appeared, she could not help but be dumbfounded. Xiao Yanlong naturally understood what Xiao Sou was waiting for. He was also very puzzled. The news that had been sent back at the time should not have been wrong. What had gone wrong? Xiao Sou, you don't have anything else to say now, do you? Bailey Hongzhuang stared at Xiao Sou as the corners of her lips curled into a faint smile. However, it gave Xiao Sou an inexplicable sense of superiority. When her innate talent had first awakened, she did not know that she would have two innate talent. Therefore, she had no way of hiding it. After she and Di Baichen had cultivated two different attributes, she had experimented and found that as long as she controlled it, she could only display one type of innate talent. Chapter 5397. Faced with Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Xiao Sou was already speechless. She had said all the moves she could think of, but none of them were able to defeat Bailey Hongzhuang. Now, the situation was truly hopeless. Her hands and feet gradually turned cold, and she could feel that everyone's gazes no longer contained the envy from before. On the contrary, they were filled with ridicule and ridicule. This feeling made her feel like she was about to collapse. I can't accept all of this. Xiao Sou could not help but shout. After so many years of hard work, the fruits of her labor were actually snatched away today. How could she accept this? Tong Yunshu nervously looked at Xiao Sou, only to discover that Xiao Sou had actually fainted under such hysteria. How is Miss Xiao? Lu Hongwei revealed a worried expression. This matter was indeed his fault. He had also watched Xiao Sou grow up. At this moment, when he saw Xiao Sou fainting because she could not take the blow, he also felt extremely pained. It's none of your business. Xiao Yanlong looked at Lu Hongwei with hatred, then carried Xiao Sou and walked off the stage. Let's go. Xiao Yanlong coldly snorted and immediately left with the Xiao family's team. At this point, if they continued to stay here, they would only be treated as a joke by everyone. Junhong Qing, Xiao Yanlong has already left. Are you still going to stay here? Diujua looked at Junhong Qing mockingly. This guy had been counting his chickens before they were hatched, but he never thought that this would be the result. Just thinking about it was enough to know how broken his heart was. Junhong Qing had been immersed in shock until he heard Diujua's words. Only then did he regain his senses and coldly said, "It's none of your business." In the next moment, Junhong Qing also stood up angrily and said, "Let's go." Everyone watched as the Xiao family and Xiao family, who were originally the most glorious, left in such anger and sighed in their hearts. Following the departure of the two families' teams, the plaza returned to its original calm. After Lu Hongwei calmed himself down, he spoke again. "The previous matter was due to our lack of clarity. I'm very sorry that such a thing had happened. Now, the Saint of the Light has been chosen. She is Bailey Hongzhuang." Once this was said, everyone applauded and praised. At this moment, no one would question her identity. Bailey Hongzhuang had proven everything with her strength. God's favored daughter. She was a true God's favored daughter. Hers to reach's level. Bailey Hongzhuang had relied on hers had's level. To say Bailey Hongzhuang had relied on hers, SSS had relied, S to reach had sis. To S2 to S2's S. She. Her S's of this. Because too many unforeseen events had happened, the Light Sacred Assembly decided to take a 2-hour break. During this 2-hour break, the Light Sacred Assembly would conduct a large-scale chant. After hearing this news, no one complained anymore. The chant that was held once every 10 years was something everyone had been looking forward to. Now that there was such an opportunity, even if they had to wait a few more hours, they wouldn't mind. Just as the entire plaza was bathed in the chanting, Bailey Hongzhuang followed Lu Hongwei to the back of the plaza. Chapter 5398. I'd like to ask for your opinion. Are you willing to be the Holy Maiden of the Light? Lu Hongwei stared at Bailey Hongzhuang. Although this kind of situation was reasonable, no one would refuse, but he still had to ask. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and nodded. "I'm willing." Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's answer, Lu Hongwei also quietly breathed a sigh of relief, smiling. "Things have already become like this. If you don't want to, then I really don't know what to do." Bailey Hongzhuang cupped her hands. "I'm really sorry, President." She had other ways to fight for the position of the Holy Maiden of the Light, such as communicating with the President first. However, she chose this method to maximize the benefits for her family. However, she had hurt President Liu and the others in the process. She was actually quite apologetic about this. Lu Hongwei's gaze softened when he saw Bailey Hongzhuang's guilty look. "Speaking of which, I'm in the wrong. I didn't understand the situation all these years, which led to such a misunderstanding. Fortunately, Miss Bailey stood up today. Otherwise, I would have become a sinner of the Light Sacred Assembly." The old president had entrusted this important task to him because he trusted him. However, she had messed up the most important thing. Fortunately, there was still a chance to make up for it. "Since that's the case, Miss Bailey, why don't you go get ready and change into the Holy Maiden of the Light's attire? We'll hold the succession ceremony later." Lu Hongwei smiled as he looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. Towards this child, he was actually very appreciative. "Thank you, President. I'll go get ready now." Di Baichen greeted Bailey Hongzhuang as she walked over. "Dear, what did President Liu say to you?" "Nothing much. He just asked if I was willing to become the Holy Maiden of the Light." Di Baichen sighed in relief. "Where are you going now?" "President Liu asked me to change into the Holy Maiden of the Light's attire." Just as they were talking, the Deacon of the Light Sacred Assembly walked over. Shi Hongqiao was at the front. "Miss Bailey, congratulations!" Shi Hongqiao smiled and cupped his hands. That distant expression did not let others know that they had known each other for a long time. Thank you. Xia Hongzhuang smiled faintly. "Miss Xia, please follow me. I'll help you prepare the clothes for the Saintess of the Light." "Thank you very much." Then, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen followed the deacon to prepare, while all the practitioners in the venue were immersed in the chanting. Beicheng followed the deacon to prepare. The cultivators in the venue were all chanting and chanting. Xiang Zhongtong waited until he finished chanting before everyone opened their eyes. They felt as if their bodies had been cleansed, and their thoughts became clearer. Their bodies felt indescribably comfortable. This feeling was somewhat similar to the light energy emitted when the Saintus crystal was lit up. After seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang had not returned, many forces looked in the direction of the Di family and the Bailey family. They were eager to try. As for the forces closer to them, they began to try to get closer to them. Head of the Di family, congratulations! I didn't expect Bailey Hongzhuang to be the real Holy Maiden of the Light. You really gave us a big shock today. Isn't that so? I've heard that Miss Xia's attainments in the light attribute have surpassed Xiao So. Now it's finally confirmed. It's really amazing. Chapter 5399. In the face of everyone's congratulations, Diu Jue just maintained a faint smile and didn't say much. This was how the world worked. There were many people who would put the icing on the cake, but once they fell, everyone would kick them when they were down. Previously, these guys thought that he would make a fool of himself, so they were very rude with their word. At this moment, knowing that the situation had changed, he naturally wouldn't take it to heart. However, the cultivators of the Di family, Lin family, and Bailey family were all excited at this moment. This feeling was like going from hell to heaven. They were worried that something would happen to Bai Lihong, but they didn't expect to be given such a big surprise. Second cousin-in-law is really amazing. She directly snatched Xiao Sou's position as the Holy Maiden in a blink of an eye. I'd like to see how arrogant she can be when I see her again in the future. Lin Yi looked excited. In the past, when Xiao So always relied on this point to order people around, she was already very unhappy. However, no one could be on par with such an identity. Now that she didn't even have this identity, she only felt that her second cousin's initial decision was right. Hong Zhuang is indeed amazing. None of us thought that she would make such a plan before. It really shocked us. Lin Qianqian couldn't help but sigh. When she saw Bailey Hongzhuang standing out today, she was actually extremely nervous. She was really bold. Second cousin-in-law has always been very powerful. I have known it for a long time. Lin Yi couldn't help but hum a tune. The feeling of being proud and elated was so satisfying. Bai Li Fan clenched his hands at this moment, and his face was full of excitement. He was so excited that he couldn't hide it even if he tried hard. For so many years, he had been looking for opportunities to make the family stronger, but he had never found a way. Now that his family had become the Holy Maiden, the rise was just around the corner. Just as everyone was talking, a beautiful figure slowly appeared on the high platform. Seeing this beautiful figure, everyone couldn't help but quiet down. Bailey Hongzhuang was still wearing a white long dress, which was also the costume of the Holy Maiden. However, this long dress was slightly different from Xiao Sou's previous dress, but it also revealed nobility and elegance. Her beautiful and refined face was even more soul-stirring after dressing up carefully. Her dark and deep pupils were overflowing with light as if she could capture people's soul at a glance. From the moment she appeared, everyone's eyes were involuntarily attracted to her. Even a glance, they couldn't help but hold their breath. Such a beauty was comparable to a fairy of the 9 heavens that had descended to the mortal world, and the slightest carelessness would probably scare her away. Di Beichen looked at Bailey Hongzhuang, and his eyes couldn't help but reveal a trace of amazement. He had always known that his wife was extremely beautiful, but at this moment, he still couldn't help but be moved. Lu Hongwei stood beside Bailey Hongzhuang and smiled. Now, the succession ceremony officially begins. Applause sounded as if the previous waves had never happened. It was as if the position of the Holy Maiden belonged to Bailey Hongzhuang from beginning to end. From now on, Bailey Hongzhuang is the Holy Maiden of Light, the symbol of the Holy Maiden of Light. Lu Hongwei handed the Holy Maiden crystal to Bailey Hongzhuang. From now on, this Holy Maiden crystal will be handed over to you for safekeeping. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang was surprised. Such a treasure is actually handed over to me? Chapter 5400. I will definitely do it. Bailey Hongzhuang looked serious. From the moment she decided to become the Saintess of the Light, she knew that this was a responsibility that she had to bear. Moreover, as the disciple of the true Saintess of the Light, she had to bring the power of light to greater heights. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's serious appearance, a trace of satisfaction appeared in Lu Hongwei's eyes. All this while, he did not know Bailey Hongzhuang very well and had very little contact with her. Apart from the last time when Bailey Hongzhuang and Xiao So had a conflict, he only felt that this girl was very sincere. However, from the discussions of others, he also understood that Bailey Hongzhuang was a very good child. Now, let's carry out the blessing of the Saintess Crystal. As Lu Hongwei's voice fell, a trace of doubt flashed in Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes. What was this? She had never heard of it before. However, the deacons and the members of the Light Sacred Assembly stood on the high platform and formed a circle with Bailey Hongzhuang in the center. The high platform was undoubtedly very spacious. At this moment, all the cultivators of the Light Sacred Assembly were gathered here. Everyone dressed in white moved in unison. After everyone stood still, Lu Hongwei smiled faintly and said, "As the Saintess of the Light, you will receive the blessing of the Saintess Crystal. It will be very beneficial for you. You don't have to do anything. Just stand there." Bailey Hongzhuang only stood where she was. Then, chanting came from Lu Hongwei and the people around her. This chanting was different from the chanting for the cultivators below the platform. All the chanting power was superimposed on Bailey Hongzhuang. At that moment, Bailey Hongzhuang only felt a lot of warm energy attached to her body. The faint warmth felt as if she was floating on the sea. Her body unconsciously relaxed as if she could float up at any time. As the chanting grew louder, the Saintess Crystal began to change. Ripples began to spread from the Saintess Crystal. The colorful energy appeared again, but it was stronger than before. Bailey Hongzhuang was bathed in the luster of the Saintess Crystal. If everyone's chanting before made her body feel warm, then the warmth emitted by the Saintess Crystal made her feel as if it was summer. She could clearly feel the energy cleansing her body and increasing her strength. Normally, if he used other methods to improve himself, once the speed increased, there would inevitably be some side effects. However, this Saintess Crystal had a very mysterious effect. It was as if it was a kind of energy that was extremely pure. As long as it fused into the body, it could be directly absorbed without any effect. Bailey Hongzhuang had never felt so comfortable before. Immersed in this power, her strength also began to rapidly increase. When the crowd below the high platform saw this scene, their eyes were filled with amazement. Although they didn't know what the Saintess Crystal's blessing was, they knew it wasn't simple. At such a solemn moment, everyone kept quiet and didn't dare to disturb. Soon, Bailey Hongzhuang's cultivation began to break through. Seeing this, the crowd couldn't help but feel envious. How difficult was it to raise one's cultivation level normally? Chapter 5401. However, the breakthrough did not stop just like that. Not long after Bailey Hongzhuang's breakthrough, her strength once again broke through the barrier and broke through again. Crack! A soft sound was heard. Bailey Hongzhuang's cultivation had broken through again. Compared to the crowd's surprise, Lu Hongwei and the others were relatively calm. This scene was within their expectations. The Saintess Crystal's blessing was no ordinary item. Not only could it increase the Saintess's strength, but it could also cleanse the Saintess' body. From now on, Bailey Hongzhuang's affinity with the power of light would greatly increase. With her full level of talent, her cultivation speed in the future would far surpass that of an ordinary person. Only some of the more talented cultivators would be able to compare with her. How difficult was it to have an extraordinary talent for cultivation? However, the Saintess Crystal's chanting could directly transform Bailey Hongzhuang's body into one comparable to hers. The power of this was self-evident. After breaking through 3 levels in a row, Bailey Hongzhuang finally stopped breaking through. When the chanting stopped, Bailey Hongzhuang opened her eyes and looked at everything in front of her again. She only felt that the power of light in the air was so intimate. It was as if the power of light would quickly enter her body as long as she casually summoned it. The crowd looked at the beautiful white figure and felt that there were some changes compared to before. As for the specific changes, no one could tell at the moment. They only felt that her entire body was more ethereal. The holy radiance seemed to be emitted from her body, making it unforgettable. When the ceremony ended, the crowd burst into heated discussions. Among the many guilds, the Holy Assembly was undoubtedly the most mysterious and the most desirable. Today's succession ceremony allowed everyone to see more of the Holy Assembly's magical aspects. The Saintess Crystal's blessing is really amazing. It actually allowed Hongzhuang to break through 3 levels in a row. Shangguan Yingying's face was filled with excitement. 3 levels. If it were her own cultivation, it would take a lot of time. I now realize that the Holy Assembly is really amazing. I've never seen this kind of method before. Bailey Yunyan couldn't help but sigh. She wasn't a member of the Radiant Sacred Assembly, but she couldn't understand why everyone respected the Radiant Sacred Assembly so much. However, after seeing this scene, she suddenly understood. At the very least, this kind of method was not something that other guilds could use. Then you'll be able to see it more often in the future, because Hongzhuang is already the Saint of the Light. Mo Yunjue smiled faintly. The succession ceremony of the Saintess of Light came to an end amidst everyone's applause. Although there had been a lot of turbulence before, it ended perfectly in the end. However, the candidate had changed from Xiao Sou to Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang did not return to her residence after the ceremony. Instead, she went to the headquarters of the Holy Light Assembly. Because Xiao Sou had always stayed here, she had never visited the Radiant Sage Assembly in the Piercing Wind City. However, this time, his identity was completely different. The headquarters of the Radiant Sacred Assembly was extremely large. The entire building was abnormally bright, showing the light and atmosphere of the Radiant Sacred Assembly everywhere. Saintess, these are the deacons of the Radiant Sacred Assembly. Let me introduce them to you. Lu Hongwei looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a smile. Originally, the vice president should be present for the introduction. However, he knew that Tong Yunshu must have gone to the Xiao family at this moment, so he didn't mention it. This is Deacon Shi Hongqiao.